This is the most important factor. What Vitalik said about XRP in 2014. Now, this is the big news that we have been waiting for. Like, you know, Ethereum growing, and literally the CEO or the owner of Ethereum is decentralized, talking about Ripple, really takes me back to the past.
Talk about cryptocurrency.
Sorry for the bad audio.
Being like the internet of value. We're not the internet of value. Ripple is the internet of value. We're an arbitrary processor for state transaction functions. Got that? We're not the internet of value. Ripple is the internet of value.
So yeah, he's saying Ethereum is not Ripple of value. I feel like this is taken out of context. He called Ripple, you know, he said that it is internet of value, but at the time, 2014, crypto was a lot different. You know, Ripple is doing different things and XRP is doing different things. They were like brother in arms, and they still are. So here is the thing. Ripple right now is going for banks, and Ethereum is having its own growth. So you shouldn't be worried about one or the other, because both in the end will basically win. They will both serve its own factor. There's enough food on the plate.
Responsible, or being the kind of technology that enables this new world. I think when people kind of dismiss these really high valuations, hundreds of dollars plus, you know, you can see it in a world where actually XRP is successful. So let's dive over to a more broad clip of what Vitalik said in regards to...
I feel like a lot of these clips are taken out of context, you know? Suddenly you have Vitalik saying something. A lot of the stuff he said on the internet, even about XRP, they're taken out of context. That's how it's taken out of crypto. Sometimes he calls some coins are better, some coins are worse.
Here's basically how it works. You have people in the system. Everyone in the system has a debt to everyone, can have credit relationships with other people in the system. Not everyone has a credit relationship to everyone else. I might trust Richard with some amount of money, but I might not trust some random person in China. However, if I want to send some money to some random person in China, there's probably going to be some chain of people where each of us have a credit line with each other. So if I want to send $10 off to my friend in China, the way that it works is that I would send $10, where by sending $10, that really mean I would cancel a debt, or we would agree that the debt changed by $10. And then my friend would do the same with his friend, and then his friend would do the same with his friend, and so forth. So Ripple is just a mechanism for automating this. So, as it turns out, Ripple is completely not a new idea. It was around in this concept of koala networks. Now, however, koala networks have been digitized and coupled with a decentralized consensus algorithm. Magic.
So yeah, if I understand him correctly, he was basically saying, you know, Ethereum is going to do its own thing, but Ripple hit a special market back in 2014 where it was really building partnerships. It focused on building partnerships while Ethereum was focused on building a product. So Ripple went out there and built partnerships. So neither of these choices, you know, one is better than the other. Both choices are good. So what Ripple did is it built over 10 years, you know, all these networks of banks, which now they are reaping the fruit, basically. They are getting their rewards on return. And again, I feel like Vitalik knows more than anyone in crypto. He's a really smart person. And I feel like both projects are good, and they're basically like, you know, friends since 2014.
So one of the big problems with Bitcoin so far is its volatility. You know, it's gone up from 1 to 32 to 2 to 260.
He's literally talking when Bitcoin was like $1.32. So this is an old video, but it's still like 10 years later, it's spot on. Bitcoin here was $1.30 when this video is found. Again, this is a found video that we haven't seen for a long time.
6 to 65 to 1200 to, did it go to the moon yet? Yeah, it's getting there. So most people don't really want to deal with that. They don't prefer to just have plain old dollars, but still be able to use this sort of hyper efficient financial system in order to transfer them. So you just send them over on the Ripple network. That's really what Ethereum is. You know, people talk about cryptocurrency 2.0 being like the internet of value. We're not the internet of value. Ripple is the internet of value. We're an arbitrary processor for state transaction functions. Got that?
So that's a substantially more extended clip. I wanted to play that. You know, if you think about really the idea, and it started its life off as OpenCoin, of course, initially invested in by the likes of Peter Thiel's founder fund. The clip that I'm about to show you is actually Chris Larsen giving a little salute to Peter Thiel, who...
So yeah, this is the most important factor, is how far, like only a few coins survive, and literally the ones that are building products last 11 years are the ones surviving. You know, meme coins, except Doge, which Doge was revived by Elon, so I feel like it's an anomaly. Like a lot of these coins didn't survive. It's going to be hard for them to stand out, especially now that crypto is getting more competitive. You know, even Ripple and Ethereum are one of the few ones that survived.
It essentially figured out a way for the network to send Bitcoins using distributed ledgers and to enable a kind of closed monetary system or an enclosed monetary system, a different monetary system. Whereas OpenCoin Ripple just said, okay, well, this technology is very useful. Let's use it to send the value of the world. And Bitcoin's value comes from the amount of value that it has on its network. Could XRPs, well,
So yeah, the thing is, like, XRP's value could literally come from outside world, not just from what happens inside crypto. That's why I feel Bitcoin can sometimes be slightly capped, but Bitcoin literally surpassed Google to become the 5th largest asset. But in terms of, we're just talking about, you know, there's other cryptos that might catch up to Bitcoin. They will never flip Bitcoin. They will never be bigger than Bitcoin. But, you know, if Bitcoin is 2.46 trillion, when it becomes 10 trillion, you know, XRP could follow. XRP could get its first trillion market cap.
Ends up enabling trillions of dollars. It has to kind of have that liquidity to do so and be able to remit that, which could see it have multi-trillion-dollar market cap. What I want to do is actually play you the clip now of Chris Larsen. Some of you are still wondering, what the hell is the internet of value? Well, Chris Larsen gives us a brilliant take here. And then we're going to conclude the video with a little bit of price action. Do subscribe, guys. We bring that heat when it comes to XRP on a regular basis. Let's dive into what Chris Larsen has to say about the internet of value when asked.
And thank you to Peter. It's great to see him again. But, you know, obviously there is a ton of noise within the blockchain space. You know, the thing could, you know, cure every ill in the world. And, you know, the truth is 90% of it is utter nonsense that's going to go away for sure. But what comes of that, I think this is a fundamental shift in fintech. And what we believe the big thing happening here is the development of a second internet. We call it the internet of value. So that value, money, assets will begin moving as quickly and efficiently as data has been moving for the last 25 years. And we think that is profound in what it's going to do to the world. So while a lot of the attention in blockchain is around new currencies, digital assets, and certainly we, you know, work on and advocate for digital assets, XRP is the one that we've really gotten behind, that's really just a subset of a much bigger thing happening. And so really, I think you're leading into a world where there'll be complete interoperability between all the money systems, ledgers, networks of the world.
So what to me is crazy is that XRP literally built up for its 10 years what its goal was, and it worked for 10 years through all those bear markets and never quit to get where it is today. You can see Vitalik talking about it, you know, before it even became a XRP coin. History. This is like the history of XRP.
And that's really what's missing today. So, for example, we all know, you know, wealthy people, people in developing countries. I mean, we can't even really send $50 to Europe without it being all chewed up in fees. That's clearly a problem. Much bigger problem is the 2 billion people living in the developing world who need, according to the Gates Foundation, need to be able to send 50 cents to really be participants in the global economy. You can't do that in a system that's run by SWIFT and correspondent banking, where we all know it might take 3.
That's why, like, people use, you know, online platforms or whatever. But right now, what I see is, yeah, we need low fees means that there will be more productivity. With more, you know, sending transfers, basically sending transfers around the world means you increase the burn rate of the coin as well.
Days to move value between countries, and where there's high failure rates and the costs are very high. So, you know, we've been in the money world, we're living in a pre-internet world where, you know, before we had email, it was very expensive to communicate. You know, imagine sending letters, you know, nobody does that anymore. Using SWIFT is like sending a letter. You know, when you dropped it in the mailbox, you have no idea where it is, if it got there or not. So getting away from that, I think, is profound. And what we would say is that, a lot of the backlash on globalization today, it's not because globalization is bad. It's essential. It's that it's incomplete.
So something truly monumental is taking place. I wanted to play that clip specifically because he gives Peter Thiel a little shit.
I feel like it's also an important factor is why Ripple probably focused on developing countries and partnerships, not just US, is because those are the ones that really need Ripple, right? Those are the ones that will really benefit from the low transfer fees. Like if you want to send $1 to your family member, it's going to cost like 30% of that. You're not going to do that. That's where Ripple comes in, and it will be almost free to send it. Really makes a lot of sense.
Out. And that's an unexplored relationship. Although, again, if you're familiar with Peter Thiel, read his books, by the way, they're brilliant. And he's a truly genius man that's met with a lot of controversy, to say the least. Rightfully, I think so, more than wrongly. This technology was destined from the start. And many cryptos have basically came along to just distract you from it. XRP is the real
well
thing.
said.
If there's people out there still calling it a scam coin, the only conclusion that one can come by is that you've just not done your due diligence into it.
Yeah, I feel like this is the thing. Like people didn't believe in it because they didn't think it was possible 10 years ago. That's why the price was so low, because it sounds crazy on paper to work with banks. But after 10 years, look what happened. Vitalik talked about it. Everyone talked about it. And this is the history, the origin of XRP. You know, how it started is like a vision to make these global transfers. And, you got to think about 10 years ago, Bitcoin wanted to already be super regulated by government. It was like having a really bad reputation. So how is, a cryptocurrency going to work with the government? It's going to be impossible. But with a new government change with Trump administration, it's probably very certain, in my opinion, my personal opinion, that XRP is going to be in some way mentioned or working. It's already working with the banks, but with the US government, it's not out of the question. So we do have another funny video asking Uber drivers about XRP.